All right, we move on to Ohio State football talk. We got Steve Hellwagon on the line from 247 Sports. You can join him right there at Bucknuts. Steve, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I am doing just fine. It's nice to see the sunshine and some warmer temperatures. I think they're here to stay. We might possibly get blasted one more time, but I think we're through it and we've seen the other side now.
Yeah, opening day tomorrow in Cincinnati, they're saying 65 degrees and sun. So that is just about picture perfect. So we'll see how the Reds do in the first of 162.
Yeah, 65 and sunny sounds amazing, especially when you're a baseball fan in the Midwest or the Northeast, and you've seen so many opening days come and go at 36 degrees with flurries flying in the air. So 65 and sun, perfect. You've been out to Ohio State football practice, I would guess, Steve.
Well, it's been a mixed bag for me. I've been able to go to one or two of the practices that they had open, but I've missed some of the time because I went to Tulsa this past weekend for the NCAA basketball tournament to follow Ohio State. So I'm reasonably up to date on what's going on. It sounds like they're 7 practices in. They'll have 14 practices in the spring game coming up on April 13th, just about 2.5 weeks away. So seems like it's been very productive so far. And the Buckeyes are building toward 2019. Ryan Day, his first full season as the head coach, and a lot of talent across the board. Even though they had 6 guys leave early for the NFL, there's still plenty of talent across the board for this Ohio State team. Guys who were either backups or shared time with starting players in recent years, and I think that they are positioned to once again compete for the Big Ten championship, going for 3 in a row, and get back into the college football playoff.
You know, Steve, I'm trying to track down the 2 players that were injured just the other day. I think
they have two guys who are now out for the spring. Wide receiver Cameron Babb, I believe, was a knee injury, was one. And linebacker Justin Hilliard was an Achilles injury. And my guess is if we do see him, it may not be until midseason or later on. A year ago, Tuff Borland had an Achilles injury for Ohio State, was able to get back reasonably soon in the season. So Babb, this is his second injury and a major setback for him. He was a freshman a year ago, one of the big names in the 2018 recruiting class, and now I would say his football career could be in a little bit of doubt after a second tough injury for him. Hilliard would be a 5th-year senior, and I guess if he doesn't play this year, he could apply for a 6th year perhaps the following year. But again, I'm not sure he's projected at this point to be a starter by any means. So maybe he will just try and come back and play whatever he can this year on special teams and in a support role. Neither of them projected as starters, but it erodes some of your depth, certainly.
Got Steve Hellwagon on the line from 247 Sports Bucknuts, covering Ohio State football with the basketball season over for the men. Falling in that second game of the NCAA tournament to Houston. All right, Steve, we've got a viewer on the live chat asking about Tate Martell. Of course, he's moved on, but what were your impressions about Tate Martell's limited performance on the field at Ohio State and the projection for what he could be as a starting quarterback at that level?
You know, I don't think we ever got a full accounting of how good he could possibly be. I think early last season, he was Dwayne Haskins' backup, and he got into some games early last season, and I want to say he completed 10 or 11 consecutive passes at one point early in the season and really did a nice job. Then as the season wore on, they tried to use him in short yardage situations and in the goal line, and it was not a good situation. They would come in, they'd have penalties, or there'd be a bad snap and they turn the ball over. We never really got to see, I guess, everything he is capable of. I think if he puts the work in, he could be a guy that can lead a team to a pretty good season. Is he limited in what he can do because he's only 5'11"? That could be. I don't know. But I think if he puts the time in to learn the scheme and continues to improve his fundamentals and takes what a defense will give him and not try and force something in there to make the heroic play, then as I said, I think he's a guy that, Miami, for instance, could win 8 or 9 games with him as their starting quarterback. Is he a guy that's going to help you win 12 games? I don't know about that. Because then you're going against the very best of the very best to try and win those last 3 or 4 games, whatever they could be, Clemson or whoever in the ACC that they'd have to play. So I know they open with Florida, which would be an amazing thing if he was cleared to play, obviously by the NCAA with his transfer, and if he gets to start the first game against Florida, that would be remarkable. But I know he's got some tough competition for that starting spot there at Miami. So for one, to me, he was a really good kid in his time at Ohio State. And I think a lot of people up here are wishing him the best. It just didn't work out in his favor. They got Justin Fields, and, that was just kind of the way it worked out, that Ohio State and Ryan Day kind of made their preference known that this was the guy who's going to lead us going forward. And Tate Martell decided to take his ball and go to Miami, and the NCAA went with it. So there you go.
Steve, when you ran down the teams in the ACC that Miami would have to contend with, of course, you start with Clemson, and then I felt you kind of searching around, and I was doing
who else is in that conference? I'm trying, because they have some great teams like in North Carolina that will pop up and have a 10 or 11 win season, and then they revert back to 4 or 5 wins. There's been no consistency among the rest of that league. Even Virginia Tech, which was a standard bearer the decade before, has been up and down, and Florida State's going through the worst stretch of its football in the modern era. I mean, really, when you think about it. So, yeah, there is some quality in the ACC, and I'm sure there will be teams that will contend with Clemson in the division and for the conference championship. But I've spent no time studying who those teams could be. I'll tell you that.
Well, there's no question that the likes of North Carolina, Boston College, and some others could help the conference like Syracuse did to a certain extent last year. But it's all, for me, about Florida State and Miami. Those two are down. And if basically they have to be up for the ACC to have any kind of depth like you see in the Big Ten. Let's get back to the Big Ten and Ohio State. J.K. Dobbins, of course, burst onto the scene. He had that big breakout game in game 1 against Indiana on the road. Huge game and a very close effort, 20-17 before the Buckeyes put the gas pedal down in the fourth quarter. And he looked so impressive, and it led him to a monumental freshman season in 2017. Last season, not as productive. He did have the one stellar game against Maryland in which, in addition to having big runs in that game, he was just a workhorse because they were without Mike Weber. But for the most part, a disappointing sophomore campaign for J.K. Dobbins. Just your thoughts about where he is right now. Is he a power back, an explosive back? He's a little bit of both. We've heard about weight gain and weight loss for him and what kind of back Urban Meyer wanted him to be. Just obviously, it appears to be a big season for J.K.
Yeah, no question about it, because if he wants to go to the NFL after this season, he's going to have to play really well, I would say. And he's going to be given every opportunity to do that, because behind him, you're very limited in what you have. You've got Master Teague, another running back, Crowley, who's a freshman, Demario McCall, who could be used, I suppose, at the running back position, and ended up being the backup late in the season when Weber was out. But, part of last year is he split time with Weber, and Weber at times played very well and deserved to play. So I think it was more of a case that they tried to ride the hot hand as opposed to their going away from Dobbins, if that's what it appeared. So I think Dobbins is primed to have a great season. I think with Fields also being a runner, you just wonder, is he going to get all that? Is the quarterback going to take 10 or 12 runs a game and maybe take some of those away from the running back if they do the zone read and he makes the proper read and the ball gets where it's supposed to be? It should be 5 yards a clip with this offensive line. So I think that Dobbins, wants to get back to where he can, when he's given that crease, he's able to hit the home run and doesn't get stopped in the secondary or at the linebacker level, and he's able to churn out those 15 and 20 and 30-yard plays, I think, and longer. So I think that'll be kind of an exciting thing for him. But, yeah, I would say he's primed to come back and have a very good junior season. They're going to give him every opportunity. As we said, the alternatives are younger guys with not much experience who, again, in a big game, do you want to risk a fumble or something by one of those younger guys, or do you go with the tried and true guy, Dobbins, who has been pretty good for 2 years? So I think he'll be the lead dog. There's no question about it, as long as he's healthy and is able to take tacklers and go forward. I wouldn't call him a finesse back. I wouldn't call him a power back. I think he's a pretty good combination of the two in the 215-pound range, I believe. And I think that he's primed to have a pretty good season.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the Buckeyes. We got Steve Hellwagon on the line, joins us on a regular basis to talk Ohio State football. You can join Steve and the rest of the staff at Bucknuts on 247 Sports. Steve, have you seen enough of Justin Fields to know exactly why he was so highly touted? Is there that much separation between he and the rest of the quarterbacks where he just seems kind of special, the way he moves, the way he sets up, and the way he delivers the ball?
Yeah, I know on Saturday it was a case where Justin Fields took almost all of the reps with the first team, and Matthew Baldwin, the redshirt freshman, took most of the reps with the second team. And I don't want to say that Ryan Day has made his decision, but it definitely appears that it's Justin Fields' job to lose. I think that most of the people who've been to practices and observed what's going on have been very impressed with both quarterbacks and the way that they throw the football. I think Fields has shown very good command and has tried to exude some leadership qualities, and that was always a big thing under Urban Meyer, and I presume it will be for Ryan Day as well, that the leader on the field is the quarterback and the guy who makes the decisions and routes the ball properly on the field. So I think Fields, you think about what Ohio State did last year with Haskins throwing for 50 touchdowns, Ohio State setting all kinds of records that will probably never be broken. They ended up, it would be 13-1, I think, was their final record. I think. They played 14 games. Just shy of the playoff, won the Big Ten, won the Rose Bowl. I think the results are going to be similar, and if they make the playoff as a result of that, then so be it. I think the results with the offense, they're going to find different ways to attack opposing defenses. It may be more station to station than looking for Dwayne Haskins to throw the bomb to Terry McLaurin or Johnny Dixon or Paris Campbell or whatever it may be. It may be where they just take it in 10 and 15-yard chunks with Fields running the ball and throwing the ball. I think it's a good sign that they have decided, Brian Hartline, the wide receivers coach, and Kevin Wilson, Ryan Day, and Mike Yursich, the offensive coordinator, have decided that, at least for now, the starters at the wide receiver positions will all be seniors, at least, on paper. And obviously this could change week to week. But Benjamin Victor, who's just kind of scratched the surface of what he could do, would be the split end. Austin Mack, who was injured the last portion of last year, would move from split end to the flanker position, lining up off the line of scrimmage. And then KJ Hill would kind of replace Paris Campbell as the H receiver, and that's a position that they kind of shared last year with Hill also playing some at flanker as well. So to me, that's a good sign. I think there's a lot of faith in those three guys. Mack has come back fully from his injury, and I asked KJ Hill today about his impressions of Justin Fields. And he said from day one he's been very impressed with what he's seen. And come all the way around the bend, I posed the question, you threw 50 touchdowns last year. You set all these records. It'll just be a different way of attacking defenses this year. And he somewhat agreed with that. So still effective. but it'll just be a little bit different than having that guy with the heavy arm that can just throw it all over the field. So I think the jury's out on Fields to know exactly what he can do as a passer. Maybe we'll get a little bit of a feel for that in the spring game. My guess is he'll be off limits from contact, obviously, since he's so important, but that'll allow him to stand in the pocket and deliver the football, and maybe we'll get an idea what his array of throws will look like in the fall.
Always enjoy the discussion and appreciate the conversation with Steve Hellwagon. You can join him at 247 Sports Bucknuts. He's senior Big Ten writer there at 247 Sports. Getting a number of questions in the live chat about the defense, very generically, just how is the defense going to be better? I'm going to narrow it down just a little bit more. Of course, Steve, you can take it in any direction in addressing that side of the football, but I really think, despite the issues that we saw in the secondary, that it's the linebacking core that was probably the biggest disappointment and most underachieving unit on this team, not just last season, but the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I think last year in particular, the first half of the season was not good. I think by the end of the year, Malik Harrison at one of the outside linebacker spots was playing at a pretty high level. You had Tuff Borland in the middle and Pete Werner at the other outside linebacker spot. Again, I am not 100% sure how they're going to line up. I know that what they've talked about is taking one of the outside linebackers, presumably the Werner spot, off the field, and in some sets replacing them with a hybrid safety and linebacker that they are calling the Bullet. And this could be Brendan White. If they do that, it would allow perhaps Jordan Fuller and Josh Proctor, who's a promising sophomore, to get a chance to play the safety positions. Brendan White play that hybrid linebacker and safety spot. And I think he's well suited for that, because last year we saw he was able to provide great run support, even get into the backfield at times, and then also play good pass coverage as well. Another thing on their defense that Jeff Hafley, the new coordinator, talked about today was maybe they won't play a man-to-man coverage on every down and press man coverage. What they may do is line up and give you the appearance that that's what they're in, but bail out at the last second and play a little bit more zone coverages. And I think that's important from the standpoint of keeping the field covered side to side. That was an issue for Ohio State. If they would overload on one side or the other, teams took advantage of it and ran to the backside or through to the backside for big, big plays. I mean, I don't know how many 85-yard plays they gave up, but it was about 5 too many, I think, or something along those lines. So at any rate, it sounds to me like, what's been a staple at Ohio State with heavy dependency on press man coverage for years is going to be tempered at least a little bit. I'm not going to tell you they're going to be an all-zone team. Can't say they're going to be an all-man team, but they are going to be a team that disguises what they do and is multiple in terms of a blitz package, and will be able, it sounds to me, to be more effective defensively, just because they're going to take better advantage perhaps of their personnel and put another guy on the field as you could call it a nickel back, but it is a quasi linebacker type position. And I think I'm interested to see how these wrinkles and all these different adjustments will play out in the fall. If this is something that Jeff Hafley and Greg Madison, the two coordinators on defense, will stick with. I think that it is going to be experimentation, both with personnel and scheme, the first half of the season, until everybody really gets to know what they're doing and who can do what. That's important. I think what they talked about this spring was simplifying the defense and the scheme so that the guys could just run and play fast, and they can make some personnel decisions based on who flourished within that type of a defense. So I think it's exciting that after what was the worst defensive season that they've had in many years, even though it was just a one-loss season, they gave up 30 points probably 5 times or something like that. I think that they are going to work through the situation and come back with a scheme that really fits what the personnel they have.
We talk Ohio State football with Steve Hellwagon on a regular basis. You can join him and the rest of the crew there at 247 Sports. Just look up bucknuts.com. Steve, the last thing I'll hit you with is it struck me when you were talking about the accomplishments of last year and the summary being 13-1 Big Ten champions, Rose Bowl champions, despite the defensive shortcomings.
Number 3 in the final poll.
Number 3 in the final poll. They rose above the likes of Oklahoma and Notre Dame, who made the playoffs, much like they were surpassed in 2016 by a couple teams that missed the playoffs after better showings in the postseason. But you made that key comment about then we'll see, so be it. If they have another one-loss season, we'll see, because it's not an objective process, it's a subjective process. And wouldn't it be ironic that maybe the key to Ohio State's season from a score standpoint would be, instead of coming home with their heads between their legs against Purdue or Iowa, losing 55-17 or 55-24 or 49-20, instead maybe it's a loss at Iowa or Nebraska by just 3 or 6 points that doesn't look so bad, that doesn't cost them.
Yeah, I think you make a very good point. And I think if you improve on defense and can be anywhere close to where you are on offense, that is a very lethal combination. I think that would put them potentially as a top 10 or top 5 team, and would give them probably a better chance to make the case for the playoff. I think when you're giving up the number of points, the number of yards that Ohio State was giving up, I mean, had their defense been any better than Oklahoma's, which they were almost on par with each other with how bad they were, perhaps you could have made a better case, at least in terms of football, that Ohio State could have been in the playoff. But they were exposed early and often last season by different teams, and I think they were in some tough games and pulled out some tough games. At Penn State, down 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, and found a way to pull it out. So, I just think that what you have is a mixture of veteran guys who've been there. Now, some of them have played on 2 Big Ten championship teams and are dying to get the third one. A team that's got this winning streak against Michigan and wants to keep that going. And that game could be a very determining factor, obviously, in winning the Eastern Division if they're the top 2 teams in the division. And I just see a program, particularly with Ryan Day as the head coach, that this is not Urban Meyer's program anymore. It's now on the coaching staff that he has hired. It's on the players that he is bringing in, Justin Fields, as well as the incoming freshmen, plus guys he's recruited the last few years to come to Ohio State. The corner has kind of been turned in some regard, that they can't live off the accomplishments of the past. They have to go out and show that this new regime is all it's cracked up to be. So I think there's a lot at play here for Ohio State in 2019 in terms of maintaining their position at the top of the Big Ten and pushing whatever it may be, whatever buttons need to be pushed to get back into the playoff, because that's where everybody is burning to be right now in college football. And Ohio State is one of the 10 or 12 teams every year who starts a season with a very good chance to be in the playoff if all the things align in a proper way and everything works out across the board. So I think it's an exciting year. So much is new, and I think that there's enough experience there yet to say we know the way to get this done. We just have to do it.
And it's ironic to make that comparison between Ohio State and Oklahoma and take it away from the aspect that the 2 teams could control. And maybe the difference was that Oklahoma got to avenge its loss against Texas. Had Iowa not lost a series of 3-point games, Iowa was extremely close to being a 1-loss team. They lost barely in the last few seconds against Purdue and Wisconsin and Penn State, or they show up in the Big Ten championship game, and Ohio State gets the same opportunity that Oklahoma got, and that's to avenge its loss. But it was not to be. All right.
Yeah, it's just the way it all works out, and certainly you can only play the teams on your schedule. Ohio State's 3 crossovers are all very good teams this year from the West. Northwestern won the division. Wisconsin's always picked to win the division and usually does. And then Nebraska is a team, I think they only won 4 games last year for Scott Frost, but they're going to win probably double that this year. I would think 8 or 9 as he kind of gets that program back on solid ground. So, and honestly, they were in 7 or 8 games last year that they could have won. So,
absolutely,
including the Ohio State game was only a 5-point difference, I think, in Columbus. So the Buckeyes are going out to Nebraska. They've dominated Nebraska the last 3 or 4 times that the teams have played, and you know that Frost would love nothing more than to beat Ohio State. But again, everything in the Big Ten is predicated within your division. I mean, all the games count as one game, but the head-to-heads are where tiebreakers come into play. And Ohio State certainly wants to take care of business within the Eastern Division with Penn State, Michigan every year.
Steve, I can't thank you enough for coming on here on a regular basis, supporting the channel, and giving us some great analysis on Ohio State football.
It's been great, Mark. Whenever we want to do it again, their spring game coming up on April the 13th at noon on Big Ten Network, noon Eastern time. And again, I'm glad I could put a lot of focus now on football for the next couple of weeks after being out of town the last few weeks on basketball coverage, and can really sink my teeth in and see where things are really headed with this team in 2019.
Excellent, Steve. Thank you so much. We'll see you
All
soon.
right. Take care.